Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm sharing no-nonsense advice for navigating dating and relationships with confidence and ease, whether you've been dating for a while or you're just starting out. I believe dating can be fun, and I'm here to help you enjoy the process. Dating today can be a mess and so confusing, which is why I'm getting into 4 dating dilemmas that will give us a variety of ways that confusion, uncertainty, and ambiguity show up and what to do about it. And look, what you get out of these dating dilemmas and my answers is clarity on what to do if you ever find yourself in similar situations, because you might. Dating is more fun when we can be decisive and not ruminate or spiral on what to do in these scenarios, and I hope this episode guides you in that decisive direction. By the way, if you want to submit your dating dilemma, you can do that in the description. There is a link where you can submit your question for the podcast, and I so appreciate everyone who has submitted and shared their dilemmas because it really does help others feel less alone and get direction on how to handle things moving forward. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We have over 1,000 dating dilemmas submitted now, which is wild. Let's get into it. These are so relatable. And the first one I'm calling Fumbling Flakes. I, 35 female, am active on the apps and looking for a long-term relationship. I've recently experienced a very frustrating pattern. A guy will say he wants to meet up in person, but the date never happens. Here's a sampling of 4 recent experiences. These are 4 different men. 1. The date, time, and location were agreed upon. The day before the date, he unmatches me with no explanation. 2. Date, time, and location are agreed upon. I message the morning of the day to confirm. He doesn't respond, but I go anyway since it had been scheduled only a few days before. He doesn't show. When I message to ask where he is, he unmatches me. Oh my gosh. 3. He says we should get together at some point, and I propose a specific date, time, and location. He never responds as of 10 days ago of this writing, but is still matched with me. Frustrating. And the last one, number 4, I offer an evening that I'm available. He says that he'll find a location, and the day of the date, he hasn't gone back to me with concrete details like a location and time. I proposed 2 additional evenings the following week that I'm available. Same thing, doesn't follow up with any details. He says he wants to get together that weekend. I express hesitancy around continuing to provide availability with no follow-through. He says he's sorry, he understands, but doesn't follow up with a specific date plan for me to respond to. Having a connection end during scheduling is so aggravating to me because it feels like it shouldn't be that hard. All 4 of these men initiated asking to meet in person, so I'm pretty confident that it wasn't a case of me reading more interest into the messages than there actually was. I'm hesitant to take a more managerial role in making sure dates get scheduled. If I have to remind or assist a guy to plan a first date that he asked me out on, it gives me concern about his overall dependability, conscientiousness, and ability to manage the mental load of a relationship. What are some ways to decrease the chances of a broken connection between being asked to meet in person and the actual first date without completely taking over and running the planning if the other person asked for the date? Okay, thank you so much for submitting this. This is so frustrating that this happened to you 4 times. It sounds like in a row or in a very short amount of time where you're planning a date and somewhere in the planning process, they just ghost, they just bail. And you even got stood up on one of these dates, which absolutely sucks. I hate this. I hate that this is even part of dating culture right now, which is why I'm calling this fumbling flakes, because it's just a huge fumble. Okay, to answer your question, I think you're spot on with how much work you're willing to do, especially if they initiate the date. Providing your availability is typically good enough to get things going. If they ask you if you prefer drinks or coffee, that's fine because they don't know you. And I don't see any issue with them asking if you have a preference on what to do for your date. Like, I don't think you're planning the date if they're like, hey, would you rather get wine or coffee? Like, they don't know you. That's fine. Is there anything you can do to decrease the chances of this happening? I don't think there's anything you can do to stop this from happening because we don't know what's going on the other end. There are so many people out there on the apps who are dating for validation. Maybe they're apathetic, they're bored, they're lonely, they're insecure, they're nervous for a date. They don't actually want to meet up. Sometimes they're already in a relationship and they're just like, just getting the dopamine hit of getting a date. There's so many reasons why that we just don't know, which is why it's hard to decrease the chances of this happening. I mean, one step, which I hope you're doing, is to confirm the day before. I think that should be the protocol for everyone listening, no matter your gender or sexuality. just take the initiative to be like, hey, are we still on? Especially if it's a stranger, like the fact that you showed up to a date that you had planned and you were stood up, but you didn't confirm before. I'm not saying that's on you at all, but I think that that's just another reason to take the extra step to confirm, even if you feel like, hey, we made a plan, I'm going to follow through. You don't know this person. Like, do the confirmation, because otherwise you might end up wasting your time. And we don't want that. Another thing here is, let's just say you're going to meet on the weekend and there's no place or time set at that point. I assume the plan is not happening. Like, if the place, date, and time aren't all figured out in the same exchange, to me, I'm making other plans or pretending that plan doesn't exist. It's not locked in. It's either a plan or it's not. There's no tentative with this. Don't let plans be tentative in dating apps. It's either it's happening, like, let's set this up now, or it's not. Another piece of advice I have here is to see the planning phase, like once you move from messaging to planning, it's kind of a test. Kind of be skeptical about it in your mind, like, instead of hopeful. I know that sounds depressing, but since this is so common and you're not the only one that's experiencing this, by the way, you kind of have to be in your mind like, okay, let's see if they're really being real about this. Like, okay, yeah, we're making a plan, but who knows if it's going to happen. Another piece of advice I have for this is taking the step of initiating the date yourself, not planning, but I would try throwing in a, we should meet, or do you want to continue this conversation in person, to see if that changes anything. Because the pattern that you mentioned is that this is happening every time the guy initiates the date. So I'm wondering if there will be any difference if you bring it up first and see what happens. You can say you're interested without planning the whole thing. I also don't think taking over the planning, taking on that managerial role you mentioned, would necessarily stop this from happening. Because again, this is less about a lack of skill and more about, so like I said, someone's nervousness, anxiety, insecurity, apathy, or they found someone else they'd rather talk to. It's not really a skill issue, I think, for a lot of the time. And I don't want you to do more work than you're already doing. So just to recap, the tweaks are: try initiating meeting, which is not planning the date. Just get to the point where you're like, okay, I want to meet. Try confirming the date before. Make sure that you're actually setting a date in the exchange where you're planning the date, instead of say, let's do something this weekend. No, don't accept that. Be like, okay, this weekend I'm free at 4 p.m. Those are just some of the ways to get a solidified plan earlier on, so this whole flaky thing doesn't happen as much. But again, there's only so much we can control here. I ran into this too on the apps. The pattern that I saw was guys initiating and planning and then rescheduling and then never actually following through on their schedule. So they'd be like, oh, I'm sick or something came up. Let me get back to you on another time we can meet. And they never did. I learned that when someone pulls the rescheduling move, that the date is likely not going to work, and I didn't have my hopes up. To me, that was a clear sign that they were going to ghost me, and that happened pretty much every time this whole rescheduling thing came up. When I had to reschedule a date, I made sure to send my availability right away, like within that initial exchange, so they knew that I wasn't bailing. Unfortunately, people will do anything to avoid just saying the truth, that they're no longer interested or available, or they never were actually interested and they just wanted the dopamine hit. The good news is that people who actually want to meet you usually make meeting you surprisingly easy. You won't have to convince them to show up. You won't have to do all this managerial work. So while this pattern is so frustrating, it also helps filter people out before you've even invested weeks or months. I would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Share in the comments if you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube. And we're going to take a quick break. I'll be back with a few more. Okay, stop what you're doing and listen up, because Balesa and I are giving away free spicy toys or gift cards to every single one of you. That's right. Everyone who signs up wins something. We're all winners thanks to Balesa. And if you haven't heard of Balesa, let me put you on. They're a by women for everyone company that's completely flipping the script on sexual wellness. Bellesa toys are made from medical grade body safe silicone and can come in sleek, travel friendly charging cases, which are way better than keeping them loose in the drawer for someone to find. Oops, guilty as charged. You've definitely seen Bellesa's viral toys all over your For You page, like the rose. It blew up for a reason. This little flower shaped suction toy is iconic. Or their famous Whisper collection, the first ever fully silent vibrators, which is amazing if you share your space and appreciate a little extra privacy and peace of mind. Shipping is next level discreet with an unmatched warranty program, 1 year no hassle replacements, plus a 10-year quality guarantee. If your dog destroys your toy, Bellesa will send you a new one in exchange for a photo of your dog. We love that. Of course, I had to hook all of you up, so my friends at Bellesa and I are sending out free toys or gift cards to everyone who signs up. You heard that right. Every single one of you wins something. Just click the link in the episode description or head to bbvibes.com/datingintentionally. That's bbvibes.com/datingintentionally. All right, getting back into it. Here we go. I'm calling this one Comedy Clash. I, 23 female, shared a list of boundaries and humor preferences with my boyfriend, 25 male, of 1 month after some conflicting humor preferences. He said he was annoyed by parts of it. He understood most physical boundaries, like grabbing me out of nowhere, but felt restricted on jokes and like he couldn't be himself anymore, which made him feel judged. The conversation lasted about 15 to 20 minutes. I offered compromises, like when a joke upsets me, telling him in the moment, or if he could briefly explain why the joke is funny. He rejected my suggestions, apologized, said he understood me, and that he had a plan moving forward, which was not telling jokes at all, saying he felt it was the safest option. He was considerate about time and gave me a heads up around the 10 to 15 minute mark that he'd like to wrap up soon and play his game, but said that he was open to extending if needed. However, he repeatedly said the issue was already resolved and he didn't want to keep lamenting on it. I told him I still didn't feel fully understood or that it was resolved, especially because some of the jokes, which are violent, misogynistic, and sometimes stereotypes about minorities, made me feel unsafe and caused me to emotionally pull back. He suggested avoiding offensive jokes near my period because I've been, quote, emotional lately, which bothered me. I explained the bigger pattern. When I feel more attached to him, his jokes make me distance myself and feel drained. I ultimately decided not to push further, even though I felt unsettled and unheard. How do you think I should address this with him? Am I overreacting? Okay, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on this one. Drop them below if you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube. And to answer your question directly, I do not think you're overreacting. Feeling unheard, being dismissed, being uncomfortable with the jokes he's making, those are all red flags, and I applaud you for speaking up about them so early on and getting clear about what you want. I wouldn't be able to date someone who makes violent and misogynistic jokes or makes jokes about minorities. Like, no. And I'm married to someone who's constantly joking around, but in a way I actually appreciate and that I actually find funny. Feeling unsettled and unheard after a conversation, I think that happens sometimes in healthy or solid relationships if the communication skills aren't there. But it's still a big clue that you didn't feel like he took this seriously at all. And that is definitely something that you're noticing that's like, okay, this is something to work on. And I want to highlight this because I think people will walk around being like, I'm a great communicator. I know how to apologize. I know how to say the right things. But sometimes your partner still doesn't feel like it's resolved. And that means that there's something that needs to be looked at and adjusted there between the two of you. Sometimes just knowing what to say isn't enough. And I know because I definitely have been dealing with this too in my relationship where it's like, okay, we kind of have the tools, but sometimes it just doesn't land. And it just means you have to work on it. Another thing here, blaming your heightened emotions on your menstrual cycle gives me the biggest ick. Yes, PMS and PMDD are real, but when your partner suggests something like this, it's so icky to me because it's very invalidating. It's basically saying you're only prickly because of your hormones, not because my jokes are bad. You deserve a partner who can be themselves at all times in a way that doesn't trigger you that much, make you feel unsafe, or, rather than just completely acting differently on your period. That's not a strategy. That's not going to help. All right, other things here. Making the list of the jokes and things he does that bother you wasn't the wrong move. I think it's good that you figured out what's specifically bothering you before you addressed it. The mistake, though, that is something that I'd hope you do differently in the future, is using this list as like a to-do list for him to fix. I don't think you can effectively change someone's sense of humor. It's so connected to how they think, their mind, how much of a filter they have, and I don't think we can change that in a partner. It sounds like you might not be able to accept him. You don't like his sense of humor, right? In this conversation, you described that he said he feels the only way to be in this relationship with you is to suppress his offensive sense of humor completely. The second someone you're in a relationship with says, okay, I guess I just can't talk about this topic with you forever, that is a huge sign that you're not compatible. That's just not how a healthy relationship will function. I think there are other actions you could take here, but the main one to consider is that maybe this relationship isn't the right fit for you, mainly because I don't think you can change his sense of humor. So that's my answer to this. You're not overreacting. 1 month in, I don't think this is a fit. Another comment I want to make really quick, just so we're all on the same page, is that boundaries aren't about controlling what other people do. They're about what you will do in reaction to someone crossing a boundary. So if your boundary is, I can't listen to racist jokes, then you have to remove yourself from the room or the conversation when that happens. Or if you're like, I can't be with someone who makes jokes about the stuff, then you leave, right? That's how boundaries really work. And just know there are people out there who have a sense of humor that you'll jive with more and to be more playful, goofy, kind sense of humor. You don't have to spend your relationship trying to edit their personality. That just sounds exhausting. Let me know what you think if you've been through something similar. If you're listening to this, I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I hope that helps. Moving on to the next one. I'm calling this one Casual Conundrum. I, 44 female, met a guy, 34, in the wild at a restaurant bar 2 weeks ago. He got my number before he left, so I texted to mention that I was going to be in the area the following night, and he wanted to grab drinks after my dinner. He followed up the next day. Drinks didn't end up working out that night, but we communicated throughout the week, and he asked me out for drinks that weekend. It went well, great chemistry. He's maybe a little young, but I had a good time. The following week, we were in touch, but since the beginning, his responses are very delayed. We had a movie night Friday at his place. He's very engaged, asks questions, tells me about his life, and seems to enjoy my company. But the lag in responses and me feeling, though, as if I'm initiating more is bothering me. I'm not interested in getting into anything serious that leads to marriage, and he's not at that point either. What would Talia do? Do I bring it up or just let things fade if he's not reciprocating or reaching out? Thanks for this. I think this is such a common thing. Like, you meet someone in the wild, you hit it off, you're kind of seeing each other, but you're feeling off about something. Look, if I was in your shoes, I personally would focus on other connections, especially if you're not interested in anything serious. Focusing on one person can lead to catching feelings. So for me, I would usually see 2 to 3 people at a time, which I know isn't realistic for a lot of listeners. That is a lot, but it helped me detach and not care if someone wasn't responding, because if one person wasn't responsive, then usually the other person I was talking to was more responsive and I would be focusing on that connection more. So if your level of effort is bothering you, then yes, maybe matching their energy in the situation, especially since you are not looking for anything serious, could be the move. If you were looking for something serious, then yes, you bring it up or decide that it's not a fit and you move on. I guess where I'm coming from is that for casual connections, seeing each other once or twice a month is a great cadence to avoid catching feelings and to avoid being super integrated into each other's lives. And you don't need to be texting every day. Like, why text every day? If you're desiring connection and your outlet is texting him, consider that maybe you need additional outlets for connection, and not just romantic ones. The other thing I encourage you to do is, no matter what season of life you're in right now, is to really define what kind of relationship you want and why. You say you're not looking for anything serious that leads to marriage. Okay, but what does that actually look like to you? What does it feel like? How often do you want to text with them and see them? How do you want to spend time with them? Get clear on that, because right now you're in a position where you've made this casual, fun connection, but you don't seem clear on if it fits in with what you're looking for right now. This is how you get into the chooser mindset, even if you're dating casually. In general, the early stages of dating become so much more enjoyable when someone's response time isn't determining the quality of your day or how you feel about yourself. And we're going to get into that even more into the next dilemma after the break.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
All right, real quick, before we jump back in, if you're enjoying this podcast and finding it helpful, a rating would mean the world to me. You can drop a rating if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening. And when you follow and rate, it helps other people find dating intentionally, and it's the easiest way to support my work. So thank you so much for rating and following. All right, this last one I'm calling Power Play. I, 34 female, met a guy, 28, on a work trip 6 months ago. It was meant to be a one-night stand because we live 5 hours away from each other. A little over a week ago, he found me on Instagram. We liked each other's stuff back and forth for a couple of days until I DM'd him. He immediately took it to text. He told me he would like to see me again sometime and asked what was the likelihood of talking on the phone would be. We talked on the phone this past Sunday night and we had an amazing conversation, and at the end he asked if we could talk again in the next day or two. I said yes and to text me, and we set up a time. The next day he was traveling, so I sent a nice "hope you had a safe and easy travel day" text. It took him 6 hours to respond, but he did respond. I texted him back that night, Monday, and I haven't heard from him since. It's now Wednesday, past the window of a couple days in which was the suggested time frame to talk on the phone. Yet despite the silence, he's watched all my Instagram stories, and since meeting him 6 months ago, I always felt like I would like to get to know him better if the situation was different given the opportunity. I know he owes me nothing, but I feel like old triggers are coming up and my mind is going crazy thinking I did something to screw this up or push him away, even though I logically know we barely know each other. I feel like the ball is in his court, and I do not want to be the one pursuing him because it's gotten me into bad situations in the past. I need at least equal effort to mine on his part. Do I let it go and wait to see if he ever texts me again? Do I send one more message trying to set up a time to talk? What can I do to maintain my power in the situation that isn't just walking away and giving up? Thanks in advance. So I really, really appreciate this question. I really appreciate the feelings you brought into it and how this is making you feel. And you'll notice, or I noticed, that this is almost the same situation as the last dilemma. Slow responses, feeling like you should be doing more. But I have a different answer for this one. And I think because it depends on what you want. This person who submitted didn't say whether or not she wants a long-term relationship or anything serious, but I'm getting the sense that there's something deeper here that she wants. So back to the question, I think there are two separate things happening here. There is this connection, and then there are your triggers. And right now, they're getting mixed together. We don't have all the information, but based on what you wrote, it seems like you're trying to soothe and tend to old wounds through someone you barely know. And that's part of why you feel powerless. Your relationship with the old triggers you mentioned is way older than your relationship with this guy that you met 6 months ago and had a one-night stand with, right? The facts are you just met, had one in-person encounter, one phone call, and now you're waiting for someone you've barely spent time with to determine whether you feel okay about yourself. And you said it yourself. You feel like you don't have power in the situation, and that's part of why. He's activating these wounds, but he didn't create them. The story your brain is telling you is like, I must have done something wrong. I pushed him away. I'm not enough. I mean, that I definitely have gone through that. I'm sure my listeners have gone through that too. So this is actually a great opportunity to rewrite the story a bit, practice something different, and learn to manage your anxiety around this. And this is part of why I love dating. Dating gives us so many chances to work through our triggers and wounds even before getting into a relationship. So instead of looking to him for reassurance, can you give it to yourself? Can you tell yourself, I know this feels scary. I know this reminds me of old experiences, but this interaction does not determine my worth. I didn't do anything wrong. One person pulling away doesn't mean I'm going to be alone forever. That's how you take your power back. Because the more you rely on people you barely know to make you feel secure, the more you reinforce the belief that your security is in the hands of someone else and how they're treating you. You asked, Do you let it go? Do you send another message? Well, this is the other part. I need you to ask yourself how much this connection is really worth pursuing. This is someone who lives 5 hours away, who you hooked up with once, had a great phone call with, but who hasn't followed through on calling again. Can you send one more text? Sure. You can send something simple like, hey, I'd love to catch up if you're still interested, but my question is why? What has this person actually done to earn that much of your emotional energy? What have they done to make you want to invest more time into the connection? And we have to take the potential off the table here, as well as anything you've learned about them on the surface that makes you interested, like having the same hobbies and interests. If he reaches out, great. If he doesn't, I wouldn't keep investing. I'd put the energy back into your friends, family, hobbies, and the people who consistently show up for you instead of someone who doesn't make you feel like worthy. That's where your power is. So like in the end, the power is taking the security and certainty you're searching for out of the hands of this person and giving it to yourself. It's hard to do. It takes practice, but that is really how you do it. There's one other little thing in here that I did want to call out, and that was when you said, I don't want to be the one pursuing him because it's gotten me into bad situations in the past. I want to call this out because I feel like a lot of people do approach dating with this mindset of like, I did this in the past and it didn't work out for me, so I'm never going to be the pursuer again. And I think I agree, pursuing should be mostly equal, mutual, reciprocal. But the framing of I'm not going to pursue because it didn't work out for me is very similar to like, I'm not going to apply for a job because I got rejected in the past. It's like, you got to keep going. You do have to actually keep showing up. And I think it's like, you're noticing the pattern of I pursue and then that leads to it not working out. It's kind of like the wrong pattern to pay attention to, because at the end of the day, you do have to show up. You do have to pursue. The pattern to actually look at is who you're pursuing, why, and like in this situation, what they're triggering for you. So I feel like you're really in a good spot to start working through these triggers and start kind of paying attention to the right things in your dating journey. Not, oh, if I pursue, I'm going to get rejected or it's not going to work out. That's not actually the reason necessarily. It's more about who and why than anything else. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for trusting me. Don't forget, you're doing great. And if you know someone who is navigating dating and could use a confidence boost or fresh perspective, share this episode. And if this podcast has helped you, a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify goes a long way. Once again, I'm Talia. This is Dating Intentionally, and I'll see you next time.